Hey, good morning or afternoon, all of you wonderful people. This is Elder Robert Webb coming back to you again. Hopefully, everyone has enjoyed their Sunday morning worship experience, whether it was in your car, your bedroom, your living room, basement, bathroom. Hey, wherever you were, hopefully you were able to receive a word and experience the uh, uh, a form of corporate worship, if you will. I just wanted to bring something up or talk about something that one of my daughters mentioned to me. Um, as most people may and or may not know, the month of May is actually, or was at one point in time, known as Mental Health Awareness Month. And my daughter mentioned to me that she read somewhere that someone, because of the quarantine and because they were confined to their home, um, had become so depressed and so despondent, um, with their being with that individual being alone to the point where they actually took their own life. This is definitely not something that we want to hear uh, during this time, and but it is something that's very easily understood. After all, the media is always kind of bombarding us with the fact that X number of individuals have succumbed to COVID 19. X number of individuals have now been um, diagnosed with it. You don't really hear a lot of uh, news about individuals who are recovering. It seems like that information is kind of being swept under the rug. But of course, uh, there was a phrase that I remember hearing back in, I think it was my freshman year in college, during one of my journalism classes that I took. They said that there was a phrase that we would hear that was just not true. That if it bleeds, it leads. That type of situation, and it seems like although it was uh, kind of written off as propaganda, if you will, or just something that people would say, that it is kind of true. That being said, it kind of behooves us to try to keep in contact with those individuals that are, um, let's just say, feeling alone. Kind of keep in contact with one another, if you will, even in your own house. It is definitely a possibility that you can be in a house full of people and still feel alone. I mean, honestly, I've had moments where I was going through different situations and I was actually in a church, huge church full of people, surrounded by some of the best musicians that I've ever had the privilege of working with, but still ended up feeling like I was all by myself. I completely understand how that can happen. I mean, even Christ himself uh, kind of probably had to feel that same way even when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane. Took some of his, closest people with him up there and asked them, just watch and pray with me for an hour. And it seems like they just kind of couldn't stay awake. But I wanted to expand on that idea just a little bit further because in the midst of this aloneness, if you will, uh, there's another phrase that well, you used to hear a lot. An idle mind is the devil's workshop. This is definitely a true statement as well. Definitely a true statement. The only reason I say that is because if your mind is unoccupied, quite literally, you become subject to whatever is around you. Um, you become subject, or uh, you can become victim to everything that's around you. You can't be surrounded by negative things and find it easy to be positive. At the same time, you can't very easily surround yourself around positive things and not really find it difficult to remain negative. Now, granted, you will find one of those negative Nellies or, negative Nicks every once in a while. But the truth of the matter is this: it's vitally important that we keep our mind, keep our mind uh, steady, if you will. As a matter of fact, uh, not mistaken, Romans actually says, "I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God." Uh, Now, what does that sacrifice have to do with anything else that I've already said up to this point? Keep it. Well, let's go and look there, because I want to make sure that I'm not. I want to make sure that I'm not just saying something that is not going to help us down the line. There we go. Beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service, and be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, uh, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. It's I know last week kind of mentioned the fact that it's very difficult for us to escape a lot of what's happening in this world right now if we neglect the salvation that God is offering us. But if you've actually accepted the salvation that God has offered you, great, awesome. I love it. God bless you. I'm praying for you and I'm praying with you. But I don't want you to miss out on that same peace that comes with it. He did say in his word, "My peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth, but my peace I leave unto you." You've got to remember that the peace of God is something that you have to be willing to accept as well. And not only be willing to accept it, but be willing to practice it. Yes, you can actually practice the peace of God. There's a book written by, oh my goodness, I can't remember his name. It was Brother Lawrence. Yeah, Brother Lawrence, called Practicing the Presence of God. It's a very short read, something that I actually have read through and found it very beneficial. But here's the gist of it. In practicing the presence of God, you're actually able to practice the peace of God. You're actually able to practice the power of God. And the reason I say practice these things is because it's very difficult to find yourself in a situation where you're not really aware of the presence of God. Uh, if you actually have practiced it. No, I'm not talking about practicing your shout, practicing speaking in tongues. I ain't talking about all that. But what I'm actually talking about is legitimately practicing recognizing the presence and the very power of God in your life. There's a passage in Old Testament in the book of Psalms where uh, I've really gotten frustrated with a lot of interpretations of it, especially whenever it's being preached. There in Psalms, let's find it. Nope, that's Proverbs. Let's go a little bit further back. Right there in Psalms. Psalm. Hold on. There's a passage here in Psalms that actually says, actually begs the question, how do we sing the Lord's songs in a strange land? And I've always said in my response to that question, it's easy to sing a song in a strange land when you've actually practiced it, when you've actually rehearsed it. Um, any musician, any singer can tell you this. When you are dealing with situations where you've not practiced on, well, you've practiced a piece of music, let's say for a couple of hours, you've literally perfected it. I mean, it sounds better to you than it has ever sounded before. But the moment you go to another location, you don't immediately forget it. You're actually able to draw from that. You're actually able to draw from what you've rehearsed regarding that particular song. You're actually able to pull everything out that you normally would be able to, that you did every hit, every melodic movement, every change, every lyric. You've got it. It doesn't matter whether you're in the practice studio, you're in the uh, uh, on the stage at your local church, or you're actually hitting the road going to one of the larger venues. When it's time for you to do that song, you'll actually be able to do it without any problems. That being said, I find it very difficult to believe that uh, I find it very difficult to believe that if you are able to practice the presence of God and not be able to practice the presence of God, that you won't. Let me be very cautious about how I'm saying this. I don't have to say it. I can just say it exactly the way Scripture says it. The Bible says that thou will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you. It doesn't really matter what you're dealing with, as long as you can keep in your mind that you have full access to God's peace. As a matter of fact, uh, as a matter of fact, here's what I'm going to challenge you to do. There's one passage in Philippians that a lot of us have probably heard and have, as Dr. Craddock said, potentially overheard. Philippians 4, verses 8 and 9. And this is the King James Version, which I almost never read from, but still, this is what I've got for right now. It actually says it like this, Philippians 4, 8 and 9. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, guard your mind. Because the first mode of attack will be hearing something that's true immediately followed by something else. It's actually been said several times that the most dangerous thing is a lie tinctured with truth. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report. If there be any virtue and if there be any praise, think on these things. Verse 9, those things which I have both learned and received and heard and seen in me, do, and the God of peace shall be with you. One key thing I want you to kind of keep in mind, whether you are surrounded by friends and family, uh, or you're in your place by yourself, he said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. If he said it, that's what he meant. I'm actually going to continue praying for you and praying with you. Um, I don't do this often, but if there are any prayer requests or anything of that nature, uh, I don't mind adding things to my prayer to-do list. That being said, keep an eye on each other, encourage each other. Um, don't be so quick to repeat all of the negatives that you hear. Remember, um, remember, we are pretty much our our brother's keeper. I'm trying to find not so churchy ways of saying these things, but sometimes it's just true that way as well. And if that be the case, just like that moment, Adam and Eve pretty much found themselves lost in sin. I like the way Chandra Pierce put it. That was kind of God's first group therapy session when he pretty much asked, "Where are you?" That being said, ask yourself that same question: Where are you now? Are you okay? Do you need to talk? Uh, Still kind of yearning for that, that human touch. Just as sure as God will talk to you, He'll also touch you as well. And I actually pray that you actually experience that. I'll check in on you next week about the same time. Love you and praying for you. Bye bye.